Jack Myers, and we're here today talking about valve assemblies. And the valve assembly is one of the most important parts of your regulator. This controls your pressure, and these parts are wearable parts, so you will want to replace them occasionally, okay? We have several different types of valve seat material. We have a Buna, which is the softest material. You can see it's black. On the back of your seat, there should be a B that signifies that this is a Buna seat. Okay? The next hardest material is a poly red. You can see by that. And again, on the back, you will see a P. Polytan is the hardest material. Again, this information or this seat will have a P on the back. Polytan is the hardest material, and then the next material is your Viton. Viton is specifically for higher elevated heat. It is very heat resistant, and it is the best for that application. Now, all of these seats are dependent on your differential going across the seat. We have a chart that we are including in this video so that you can make your seat selection based on the differential pressure from your inlet to your outlet pressure, okay? So one of the first things I want to do is show you a valve assembly. The valve assemblies are based on your flange size. So when you're ordering parts, make sure that you're ordering the parts specific to your flange size. It is not dependent on your ANSI. Your seat material is dependent on your differential, so you have to be cautious as you go up in your ANSI class that you may have to check your differential. So this is the first valve assembly. This is for a 2-inch and a 3-inch flanged regulator, okay? Also a 2-inch screwed, so any of those size classes, okay? You can see we have a lock nut, we have a set screw, and we also have O-rings in these. I'm going to take this apart and show you a couple of tricks for making sure that you don't have any kind of problems with the assembly or disassembly of these valve assemblies, because if you do any damage to these parts, you're going to have some problems setting your valve. So you want to make sure you have real free movement on these screws, on these threaded areas. So we're going to have tighten this up just a little bit. Make sure that you've run this down together, and we're going to just snug this up with the Allen wrench. It's a 5/32 Allen wrench for the 2- and 3-inch valve assembly. So I've got that snugged out, so I'm now going to put it in a vise. You'll want to clamp here, right where that set screw is, and on this flat. It's very important that you have these two pieces together, because if you don't, you're going to crush this, and once it's deformed, you're going to have a very, very difficult time trying to set your valves, because they will not move freely. So we're going to set that in there, just like that. We're just going to snug that down. It doesn't have to be super, super tight. It just has to make sure you don't move it. Now, I like to use a 15/16 open-end wrench when I'm doing these assemblies. I've tried it with sockets. A deep well socket can work. However, what I've found is that when you're torquing it or when you're running it down, it is very difficult to keep a good circular pattern. And what ends up happening is you cross-thread it. So this is one of the reasons why I like to use a 15/16 wrench, okay? So we're going to put that on, and we're going to take this around a few times and take this valve assembly off. Now, the nuts that are included on these are nylon locking nuts, okay? So these will keep it from having any kind of loosening, if you've got a lot of vibration or your valve assembly is moving up and down quite a bit, that will make sure that we don't have any kind of issue as far as it loosening up. So the next thing we're going to do now is we're going to take off the retainer. Now to do that, you're going to have to grip this and it will pull up a little bit, okay? Then you're going to feel some resistance. So you'll push that seat back down like that, and it should give you a little space for you to grab your retainer, okay? Now what happened basically is this O-ring has moved up, and when it moves up, it stops about where the threads are. So there's a little bit of space there that is not threaded. So that's why you're resisting. So it's best not to try to destroy that O-ring, okay? And that lifts off just like that, okay? So now we're going to take this back out. We're going to loosen this set screw. We're going to spin this off. Set that aside. Now we're going to put this in the vise here. Make sure you're not clamping on that fork and you're keeping that clear of any kind of compression. Again, that's a part that slides on your bottom bushing. There's a pin and bushing down at the bottom of your regulator on the bottom inspection plate. So make sure you're clamping on the hex here. Okay, so we're going to open that vise up just a little bit, clamp that down. And again, we're just going to snug that. It's nothing major that you have to do here. So we're going to take this off now. Now, as I take this off, make sure you're not feeling any kind of real forced resistance, okay? You should not be seeing any kind of shavings coming off the threads. Everything should be very nice and smooth, okay? Again, you have a nylock locking nut here. Okay, we're going to loosen that vise up a little bit. That's all you have to do to get that off there. And again, you're going to have just enough space where you're going to get in there. Now, as you can see, I'm having a little bit of a problem here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this back in a vise, and I am going to try to take this out by spinning it, okay? I'm going to spin this up. This is kind of threading it up to get some distance. Then I'm going to try pushing down again. Now I've got my space. So we've got our O-ring here, we've got our retainer. And that should lift off just like that. Now on the reassembly, it's very, very important that this part seats properly here. So this is one of the things where you've got to make sure that between the face of your vise and the underside of your seat, there is some clearance. So make sure that you don't have that flush against your vise, otherwise you're not going to get the proper seating here, okay? So now what we're going to do is we're going to put our seat back on. We're going to put our O-ring back on. Now you can put some lube on the O-rings. Silicone lube, again, is what we use on all of our O-rings. Do not put oil on them. Oil will cause them to swell, okay? Any kind of petroleum. You'll want to use silicone lube on things as much as you can on all the soft parts. Now, our next component again is our retainer. It should slide on easily. Now, one of the things we use is Molykote. It is a very good lubricant for doing these valve assemblies. Molykote is used on several different parts that we have, so it's important to try to have some of that on hand. If you don't have Molykote, again, some silicone spray will be okay to use on this, as well as maybe some silicone lube, okay? So we're going to go ahead and tighten this back up. Going to put this on. We've already got a little bit of moly still on this lock nut. And you can see this should go on very easily, very smoothly, and you should not have any problems with this going on. If you do, if you start to feel some resistance, immediately stop. Try to back it off, okay? Now, as we come down, we're not going to try to put a ton of torque on this, but you're going to see we move a little bit. We're just going to snug this up. Okay, that O-ring's going to make a seal. Just snug it up. It does not have to be over torqued. Again, that locking nut is going to take care of everything. So now we're going to reassemble this, spin this all the way up until it stops. Use your 5/32. Allen head, snug that down, put this back in a vise. Again, just snug, bring this down. Again, don't forget your O-ring. It's extremely important. That makes the seal. The last thing you want to do is have a leak by your valve assembly due to an O-ring issue. It is also recommended that you do not reuse the O-rings, okay? Always use new soft parts whenever you do the disassembly. So you're going to go around like this, snug this up. Just nice and snug. Now at this point you'll want to loosen your set screw to make sure you have very free travel on your threads. You want to make sure that it's very free. If you have any resistance, work that valve seat back and forth. If you're having any kind of problems with the threads, okay? It's very, very important because that's going to give you much more ease when you're setting the valve. So this is the 2-inch and 3-inch, okay? So we're finished with that.